My name is Gene Hoglan, and we are currently at the Gramercy No Mercy Theater in New York City. Tonight, playing with the mighty Death to All. It's gonna be a kick-ass night of metal. We are starting the first of a two-night stint here. Tonight's going to be the Scream Bloody Gore night. Tomorrow night for us is going to be the Sound of Perseverance. The Scream Bloody Gore set harkens back to the early days of death metal, which are always pretty fun. We concentrate on the Scream Bloody Gore record as long as with the two following records, which are Leprosy and Spiritual Healing. The next night is Sound of Perseverance in its entirety, and then we play the three albums that preceded it: Symbolic, Individual Thought Patterns, and The Mighty Human. You get your death metal yah-yahs out, the brutal early stuff, and then you get to get technical and melodic and show your chops off. So it is truly the best of both worlds, especially for death fans here. It's one thing I see about a lot of death fans. They love the first album all the way to the final record. You know, some of the old hardcores might not be into the later stuff, but for the most part, death fans, they love it all. So that's what we do. We bring it all to you, man. Death to all. One of the reasons why we exist, because we love playing together. We love being around each other. We love cutting up backstage. There is quite a bit of levity to what we do. We feed off the crowd, we feed off each other, and the crowd feeds off us, and it's just this great little cyclical pile of energy. They get what we're doing. You know, Chuck Schuldiner, the founder, no longer with us. He was always a pretty decently lighthearted guy. He had a pretty good sense of humor about him. There was a lot that he did not take seriously. Took the music seriously, but a lot of the surrounding issues he did not. So we have a feeling we've got him to chuckle a couple of times up there, you know what I mean? The sticks have always been ProMarks, I've used ProMarks forever. I used to use the DC-10s, the DC-9s, the DC-17. Back in Dark Angel, I was using the DC-9s. I think they had no tip. It would just taper. It would have the taper. Those are big, heavy sticks. I've since moved down, since started playing with Death, actually, trying to get a little tastier with some of the stuff. I use the 2Bs. These are, for me, the best stick ever invented. I will never play anything other than these. I don't care how much they throw at me from anybody else. This is my stick, absolutely. I don't have a special model or anything. This is just ProMarks 2B. You can go into any store, get this stick. I remember when I first went up to Canada back in 1997, I was just flipping channels one day. We got back from rehearsal pretty early. There was an afternoon kids shows for teenagers where they were like, "Hey kids, are you starting to play drums? Let's take a look at all the drumsticks that are out there and see what the best drumstick for you is going to be." And they put all these sticks from every other brand, including ProMark, through their paces until they broke. ProMark was by far like the last one to break. And I was like, I knew it. I chose this for a reason, because that's the thing I always found about ProMark, especially when I was having to purchase my own sticks. These just lasted longer than the average stick. So, I'm proud to be playing these. Hell yeah, baby. Since I used to play with marching sticks, one thing that I do is when I warm up, we will tape 3 of these sticks together. My wife came up with the concept when I lost my big old heavy sticks. Oh, I lost my marching stick. She's like, "Why don't you have Jeff tape 3 of your sticks together, and then you'll have big, heavy marching sticks, warm-up sticks." I was like, "Thank you." She's a genius. And that's what I use to warm up. And I have been wearing leg weights as I play for the last 36 years. The leg weights and the big old heavy sticks, just like the batter's donut. When you see the batter in the on-deck circle, and he's swinging the bat, and he's got this big old donut, sometimes 2, swinging the bat. As he's going up to the plate, he pops that donut off, and his bat is really light. Same concept with the leg weights. I wear 5-pound weights on either leg. It depends on the tune, but I'll play them. I'll use them the entire set, or I'll take them off in the first, in the first 3 songs or so. It's just a good little isometric exercise. When you pop those leg weights off, you fly. When you warm up with 3 big giant sticks taped together, when you pull out your regular sticks, they're pretty light. You can get a lot of speed off them and stuff. So there you go. Evans were on my very, very first drum kit that I ever got. That was just the Slingerland, but it was giant. I had the Evans hydraulics, the blues. I was 13 years old. I didn't know anything about tone or how to tune a drum or how to change drum heads. And those were just what came on the kit. It was a used kit I got from a buddy. And those hydraulics were the first I used. And I do remember Dave Lombardo used to use the hydraulics as well. They had a purple hydraulic back in the 80s. And it's a pretty well-known story. It's been told a million times. When Slayer was in the studio for the Haunting the Chapel record, I was there with them. Dave's kick drum was walking as he was trying to record Chemical Warfare. And that's a legendary Slayer song. And so Dave was like, hey, my bass drum is walking. Can somebody come out and like just hold my kick drums in place? And sure enough, 8 heads turned to me and said, you're the drummer, you get out there. So I'm down there on my hands and knees. I'm holding onto his kick. And that tom, that has the famous roll. That thing was right over my head. And Dave was using Evans, like they were either red or purple hydraulic heads. He had concert toms. Concert toms meaning you don't have a bottom head. So it was really easy to see right up in there and see the drumstick, that far from my face. I just remember, I was like, God, Dave, I sure hope that you nail this in like 1 or 2 takes, because if we're gonna be here for a couple hours, oh God, I'm gonna die. Sure enough, him being Dave Lombardo, he nails it in 1 take. But that's always my memory. Every time I hear Chemical Warfare, I remember that stick going, right above my head. Pretty fun story for a 16-year-old. My drum kit is a Pearl reference. It's the 7-piece. I got the 3 rack toms and the 2 kicks and single floor tom and then the kick-ass snare. That usually stays the same. The 10-inch tom is a relatively recent addition to my setup. It only came about in the last decade or so. I used to put an X-hat there, not tightly closed, but just something that didn't have the big wide open, so you get a lot of really tight stuff. I remember doing that for one of the bands that I was in. But yeah, usually my setup is the 7-piece. The tom heads that I use are the G2 clears. I used to use the G2 coateds, but the double ply really works with the amalgam that a Pearl reference is. Birch and maple, maple and birch, maple and mahogany, and mahogany and maple. I've noticed that the clears really bring out a little bit of the top end, the attack, which is pretty helpful in this kind of music. You got a lot of guitars that are driving the upper end of the tonal spectrum. So the clears really work, and the G2s are thick, and they're great. The snare that I use, for me, I speak in superlatives a lot about the companies that I use. I love Evans. I love the Evans ST Dry. That is flat out the best snare head I've ever heard, and I've tried them all. This one has, no pun intended, the snap, that crack, the pop, snap, crackle, pop. It is the finest sounding snare for my application of it, hitting it hard and heavy. But you can get those tasty ghost notes. It is just an all-around beautiful head. It's got the little dots around. Like you could see on my DVDs from 15 years ago, where I'm like, the ST Dry, this is the thing, man. So if it ain't broke, don't break it. That ST Dry I've been using for 20 years at least, and I will use it forever, absolutely. That ST Dry goes on the Pearl reference 8x14. Big giant snare. The head sounds great on it. As some of you may know, the plies are that thick. There's 20 plies of snare going around it. The plies are about this thick. It just provides this beautiful crack, beautiful just sound to it. I get chills when I hear this snare, and I get chills. A lot of it is due to the snare, and a lot of it is due to that ST Dry. On the kick heads, I use 24-inch Evans EQ3s, and those are great. God, those just sound so good just right out of the box. One thing that I use wood beaters. The wood beaters that I have on there right now are 42 years old, at least. They came on the very first pair of Camcos that I got, and I used those Camcos for 20 years. I got those Camcos in 1988. I retired the Camcos, but I kept the beaters because I love those beaters so much. So those travel with me everywhere. That's why they look like they're eaten by a dog, chewed on, and they look like they're just falling apart. But these pedals were 5, 6 years old when I got them, so they're 42 years, I would imagine. My drum tech, Thumper, and I, we create what we call analog triggers. We take an 18-inch head, a clear batter head, and we slice that thing into like 2 pieces, 2 long strips. We fold those strips over, and we tape them to the heads, and that just gets a little top end attack for the front of house sound guys. Every sound man I've ever worked with has gone, holy moly, what in the hell is that? That thing is killer. We call them analog triggers because all they are is they're a piece of plastic curved slightly, taped to the head, so when the beater ball hits it, just makes a little snappier tone there. I and my tech, Jeff Bruce, we tune to the project. Like there are many projects that we are allowed to tune really low and get that super beefy, just kick-ass, make drums sound horrifying and just, goddamn, it sounds like a legion of trolls coming at you or something. And there are other projects where sometimes the front of house guy or the band themselves, they like it tuned a little higher, a little tighter, just so if they're doing some kind of like, the kind of thing where they riff along with the things. Some of my bands have preferred that sort of approach. And the G2s can do either or. They are so versatile and they just sound great no matter what you do. Tune them really high to get a tone out of the toms, or tune them really low to get that just thunder and just violence out of the bottom end. They work so well in either capacity. That's the great thing about the Evans G2s. Well, I've been on the road since February. After this, I got to go into completing an album that I've been working on for some time. And so that is the direct thing. Directly after this, got to finish the vocals, finish the mix, and then by early 2025, hopefully that will see the light of day. Been working on it for the last couple of years. The thing that Jeff and I just did right before this was, well, we finished the Death Clock tour, and that was an amazing run. And then we went directly into the Bear McCreary, The Singularity album release party for the new album, The Singularity. That's an amazing record, and I strongly suggest everybody check that thing out. The list of guest stars is enormous. The metal is killer. The music ranges from just brutal stuff to really sublime, beautiful stuff. Bear McCreary, The Singularity, all tracked on Pearl, Evans, Promark, you name it, Diodario stuff in general. We got to do that show and then directly into this tour here. So I've been running since February, so I'll probably take a night off in July and then get to work the next day.